Hello, and welcome to the Are You Ready for a Guide Dog seminar at Virtual Visions 2020. My name is Zach, and I'll be your presenter today, and I work at Guide Dogs of America located in Los Angeles. I'm excited to walk you through the steps of determining whether a guide dog would be right for you, the pros and cons, what to expect in class when receiving a guide dog, determining what school you'd like to go to, and what a guide dog can and can't do. So let's get started. What we do. At Guide Dogs of America, we transform lives through partnerships with service dogs. You might notice in the logo in the top right-hand corner that we're not just Guide Dogs of America anymore. Earlier this year, we merged with another nonprofit called Tender Loving Canines. We now have the ability to offer service dogs to veterans, individuals with autism, and place them in facilities such as schools, hospitals, or courtrooms. For today's purposes, we're just going to be talking about Guide Dogs of America and our Guide Dog program. Guide Dogs of America was founded in 1948 by a man named Joseph Jones. Joseph had lost his vision later in life and had noticed that his independence had dwindled. Always being an independent traveler, Joseph was looking for ways to regain that, and he went to all the guide dog schools at the time and was swiftly denied, citing advanced age. Joseph was only 57. A determined man, Joseph decided to form a guide dog school of his own. He formed it on the basis of no upper age limit discrimination. No matter how young or old you are, you should be able to receive the confidence and independence that a guide dog can bring into one's life. Our campus was built in the early 1980s, and it's 7 acres of sprawling beauty. Our campus is home to our Visitor and Education Center, our student dormitories, our offices, and our breeding center and kennels. At Guide Dogs of America, all of our puppies are born on campus. We breed Labrador Retrievers. Labrador Retrievers are the most common guide dog. I would say they're probably 80% of the dogs that we produce. We also breed Golden Retrievers, German Shepherds, and we crossbreed the Golden Retriever and the Labrador Retriever. We call them our Golden Lab Cross. When our puppies are born, from the minute that they're in one of our employees' hands, they're being groomed to become a guide dog. For the first 4 weeks of their life, we have volunteer puppy huggers enter the kennels and pick the puppies up and coddle them to get them used to the human touch. This makes them much more comfortable around humans as they grow older. We call this socialization. Socialization does not just stop with our puppies at 4 weeks, it actually grows. So at 4 weeks old, we start taking them outside to our socialization area that we call puppy preschool. In puppy preschool, you'll find all these different toys and surfaces that may look a lot like a children's playground. For example, in our socialization area, we have a bridge that wobbles. Now, that's to get the puppy used to a surface moving underneath them. The first time that they experience a surface moving underneath them, it might make them uncomfortable, but we're there to tell them that it's going to be okay and give them the confidence to tackle that awkward feeling. A surface like a bridge moving under them might not be that common to them growing up if it's a bridge in specific, but surfaces move under our dogs all the time. It could come into play when they're on a moving train or an airplane or in a car, or there actually is an uneven surface on the ground that might cause them to wobble. That's just one part of socialization. There's many other things such as sights, sounds, and smells that we get them used to as well. At 8 weeks old, our puppies go home to their foster families. Our foster families are this dedicated group of puppy raisers responsible for teaching our dogs basic obedience, making sure they're house trained, and continuing that socialization that we talked about, but in the real world. For example, we want our puppy raisers to take our future guide dogs everywhere they possibly can to make sure that that dog knows how to appropriately behave in whatever situation they might encounter. A good example of this would be something like the movie theaters. So, in those early stages of this puppy's life, we'd like our puppy raisers to take them to the movies to show them, hey, this is an area where you need to settle and be quiet and be calm. As a note, if you're local to the Southern California area, we are always looking for new puppy raisers. Once our puppy raisers have our puppies from 8 weeks old to about a year and a half. At a year and a half, we ask our dogs to be turned back in. I always like to joke that we have to use the jaws of life to get the puppies back from their foster families. After a year and a half, they've certainly developed quite a strong bond. When our dogs come back in for formal training, we put them through an extensive health check. All guide dogs have to have a perfect bill of health. So that means that some common issues that we could run into is the dog might not have great eyes, or the dog could have bad hips. They might have allergies that they're experiencing. As long as they pass and have a clean bill of health, we'll enter them into initial testing. During initial testing, we're looking for any red flags that we know won't be a good fit for guide work, such as maybe being afraid of the stairs or of traffic. If the dog passes through health and initial testing, we will enter them into our formal training program, in which our guide dogs go out with our trainers every day throughout Southern California, learning new areas, learning routes, and learning the basics of being a guide dog. Included in formal training, there's of course a lot of kennel time. Now, a fun fact is that our kennel staff does a really good job at keeping our dogs stimulated while they're here and they're not working. Our kennel staff takes them out for community time where they get to play with all the other dogs. They have pool parties. I mean, these dogs are spoiled. Fridays, they get peanut butter and yogurt parfaits. Quite frankly, I'm a little jealous. Now, I'm talking from the perspective of Guide Dogs of America. I should definitely note that things that I talk about today about Guide Dogs of America can certainly change from program to program. My job today is to give you the basics and the basic understanding of what a guide dog can do, which doesn't change too much from school to school, and what you need to do to prepare to get a guide dog, which also doesn't change much from school to school. There are some things that are different between the schools. The first one and the most obvious is location. Now, that's a preference that people might have. They might prefer to go to their local school. If you live in the Southern California area, there's a lot of conveniences that can be had by living close to Guide Dogs of America. Some people take the opportunity of getting a guide dog to experience a new place. I always like to joke with people that live in colder climate areas. When you come to guide dog school, might as well take a vacation to beautiful Southern California and enjoy some warm weather during the winter. With that said, all schools do mostly the same thing. All schools do great work. It ultimately ends up being your choice as to which one you feel is the best fit for you. It's a lot like picking a college. Some people want to go to a big state school. They might want to party. Someone might prefer just a small school and commuting from home. On that note, one thing that changes between the guide dog school is the school size. There are larger programs throughout the country that can put up upwards of 300 guide dogs a year. There are smaller programs throughout the country that maybe only put out 20 guide dog teams a year. At Guide Dogs of America, we put out 60 guide dog teams a year. We break that down into 6 classes of 10 each, six times a year. Some other things that might change from school to school is the length of your class. At Guide Dogs of America, I call ourselves like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Some schools do a 2-week program. We do a 3-week program, which some other schools do, and some schools do a 4-week, month-long program. The Goldilocks reference comes into play because we feel that 2 weeks is too short to learn everything necessary to developing a strong bond with your guide dog before going home. 3 weeks is kind of that just right, and 4 weeks is probably a little too long because leaving home for a month is a big task to ask of people. Some other things that might change from school to school are the breeds offered. So I ran you through the breeds that we offer, but some schools offer hypoallergenic dogs. Some schools do completely different breeds. It all depends on what has historically worked for that school. Another thing that might change from school to school is training techniques. I'll cover our approach in the coming slides, but some differences might be a focus on food being the primary reward versus praise. The difference in collars that people use, the different commands that a school use, the different techniques in which they teach their dog and capabilities of their dogs. The last thing would be additional services offered. Some schools cover travel fees associated with coming to guide dog school. Some schools offer vet care after you leave the guide dog school. That very much ranges on a case-by-case basis. I'm just here to arm you with the idea that you need to research the school, all the guide dog schools, and ultimately determine which school you think is the best fit for you. As I alluded to, each guide dog school has a different approach. I can only attest to Guide Dogs of America's approach. At Guide Dogs of America, we believe in a well-balanced approach with an emphasis on praise reward. What this means is that when I talk about a well-balanced approach and I say there's an emphasis on praise, there could be food instituted, there could be other things instituted that serve as a reward for your dog, but praise is the main one. Food is a common reward when you are talking about guide work. I mean, with a Labrador Retriever, I always joke that you could throw a piece of kibble off the Empire State Building and that lab would go chasing off after it. Labrador Retrievers are extremely food motivated. That creates a great teaching technique when we're trying to teach a dog how to do something. So, for example, a guide dog changes at all changes in elevation, curbs being the main example, that a guide dog stops at every curb. The first time one of our guide dogs, we're trying to teach it to stop at a curb, we'll give it a piece of food. And that dog naturally will be like, oh my God, I just got a piece of kibble for stopping at this curb. And it's going to be like, hey, I'm going to stop at that next curb because hopefully I get a piece of kibble out of it. Well, what we do slowly is start emphasizing praise reward to create a bond between the dog and the handler. So the first time you give it food, okay, all good, dog knows what to do. Second time, you might give it food as well. The third time, we teach our students to get down and give their dog as much praise as they can. Get down and say, oh my God, Biscuit, you're the best dog in the entire world. And that lab, instead of receiving food, will say, oh my God, my handler loved that I stopped at that curb. It felt so good that they were cheering me on and giving me congratulations and belly rubs and whatever it may be. I'm going to stop at that curb again because I know that I'm going to get praised and my handler really likes that. Some other ways that we use reward in our well-balanced approach, for example, would be if you're leaving work in the afternoon and your dog has to walk you on your route from work to the bus stop, from the bus stop back home. Now, when you get home, that's a great time to institute play reward. Take the harness off the dog, take it out back, play fetch, or let it run in the house, whatever it may be, so that the next day when you go home, your dog is guiding you from your bus stop. Your dog is going to say, hey, I remember yesterday when I got us home safely, we had a pretty good time in the house playing fetch. And I'm going to make sure that we get them home correctly because I know that there's play reward on the other side. Some other techniques for training would be a clicker technique, which Guide Dogs of America doesn't use, but other schools use clickers to mark when there's a good behavior or if the handler wants them to do that again. And other schools, as we talked about the food reward, use it more than others or less than others. So we've talked about how we get a guide dog to do what we want it to do. We talked about how a guide dog becomes a guide dog. But what does a guide dog do? The main basic principle of what a guide dog does is called the straight line method. And that means that your dog is going to get you from point A to point B safely. Now, this is commonly something like curb to curb. And if you want to compare it to using a cane, a great example would be a cone being in the middle of a sidewalk. Now, the cone could be there for construction, whatever it may be. But with your cane, you would have been walking down the sidewalk and you would have tapped the cone. And you probably would have had to reach out and say to yourself, feel it and say, oh, you know what? Okay, that's a cone. And walk yourself around that cone. With a guide dog as your eyes, a guide dog is going to proactively see that cone out in front of you and change your course slightly to avoid the cone. If the cone is taking up too much of the sidewalk, they might stop at the cone, which, as you did with your cane, you'd reach out and feel and say, okay, that's a cone, we can keep going. It's going to stop you from walking into things that you can't see that you probably could have easily avoided. Another main principle of guide dog work is called intelligent disobedience. Now, this means that your dog intelligently disobeys you. I like to use the example of taking a hike, and as you're taking the hike, you come upon a cliff. When you and your guide dog walk up and your guide dog sees that change in elevation, they see that cliff drop off, that guide dog is going to stop. Your guide dog knows, okay, if we walk over this next ledge, we're going to fall pretty far and we're both going to get hurt. And this person that I love that feeds and takes care of me is going to get hurt. So I have to stop to make sure that we're safe. As the handler, it now becomes your responsibility to feel out and say, oh, okay, that's what he stopped for or she stopped for. There's a cliff here and there's danger. I use a cliff as a dramatic example, but there's changes in elevations and cliffs in everyday life. It could be a staircase landing or a subway platform, or as we've alluded to before, a curb. You never want to walk over a curb and roll your ankle. So your guide dog stops at all changes in elevation and will disobey you if you're about to put yourself into a dangerous situation. The other part of intelligently disobeying comes into traffic training. Now, there's a common misconception out there that a guide dog can read traffic lights. A guide dog can't read the lights. But what a guide dog can do is determine whether a car is coming and there's a dangerous situation. Especially today, as we're transitioning more and more to electric vehicles and cars become quieter and quieter, it's made the orientation and mobility skill of learning traffic even more difficult. A guide dog is going to see what you can't in a car coming, and you might be saying to your guide dog, okay, it's safe to go, let's go forward. And your dog is going to intelligently disobey you, not walk you out into that street, and tell you, hey, you need to think a second time before we go out here. Some other things that guide dogs learn are some common commands. So one of my favorites is the follow command. If I'm out walking with someone that has a guide dog from us, and I'm leading the way, they can tell their guide dog follow, and their guide dog follows wherever I go, and that means that I don't have to sighted guide them. Another command that they can learn would be landmarks. So if you go to the office every day and you commonly go to the same bathroom, your guide dog will learn, okay, bathroom, that's the common route that you're following. Some other things that guide dogs offer that are less talked about are the companionship factor. You're always going to have a four-legged buddy by your side keeping you company that loves you more than anybody else in this world. The last thing to be said about what guide dogs do is that it's just a much smoother means of travel than your cane. As we had talked about with the cone example, You're constantly receiving tactile feedback from your cane, but it can be cumbersome sometimes when you bump into something or you become disoriented. A guide dog being so proactive means that your means of travel are just a lot smoother. Now we've talked about what a guide dog can do. What does a guide dog not do? Now, we talked about that lack of tactile information just now, and that can be an adjustment for people. When you have your cane and you can constantly feel what you're touching and what is on the ground, it can be a lot different when you're picking up a harness handle and you lose a lot of that information. Additionally, guide dogs are often misconstrued as machines. A guide dog can take just knows where the closest McDonald's are. Guide dogs are animals, and much like humans, they can make mistakes. The other thing to note about bringing a guide dog into your life is that there is significant responsibility. I've heard from a lot of people, one of the biggest pros of continuing to use your cane is that when you get home at night, you can put your cane in the closet and relax. With a guide dog, you constantly have to be taking care of this individual that you brought into your life. So if it's 11 p.m. and it's raining out and your dog has to go to the bathroom, guess what? You're going out there into the rain to let your dog go to the bathroom. Another thing of note is that while guide dogs bring a lot of welcomed attention and social interaction, sometimes they can bring unwanted attention. If you're trying to get through the airport and everybody that's traveling misses their dog and they want to pet your dog, it can be cumbersome. The last thing of note is that guide dogs, of course, come with an additional cost. While coming to guide dog schools is typically free of cost, you are responsible for their food, medications, toys, grooming. There can be additional costs that come with bringing a guide dog into your life. Magic of the match. I'm going to walk you through now kind of the process of, okay, you determined you're ready for a guide dog and you're thinking about applying. What is this match process? What's this application process and class process look like? Now, once again, I have to keep throwing in the disclaimer that I'm giving you the basis of what these are commonly like. Guide Dogs of America uses pretty common standards throughout the industry, but this is subject to change from guide dog school to guide dog school. In our case, we start with an in-person visit or a video submission with the potential guide dog handler. This is for us to start gathering information about a potential applicant. What we're looking for is first and foremost physical traits. How tall is someone? What's their gait like? What's their speed like? Do they have stability issues? Do they have a veer? A veer means that if you are supposed to walk straight down a hallway, you can walk from one end to the other straight. Now, it's okay to have a veer, but say you veer to the right. Well, we're not going to give you a guide dog that also potentially pulls you to the right, because then you guys are going to be doing donuts in the parking lot. The other things we start looking for are personality traits. Is someone super social? Are they going to be able to handle a dog that likes a lot of attention? Or are they someone that might be a little bit more introverted, and giving them a dog that we know is a very personable dog might not be the best match? We evaluate these things through the entire application process, and through that, we're looking for what dog might be right for you. In our typically 50 to 60 dogs that we have on campus, there might only be 5 that match your height and speed. And then amongst those 5, there might only be 2 that we think could be a good personality fit for you. When you come into class, we continue assessing you, and we'll get into when we match you with a dog in the upcoming slides. So, classes in session. I covered that we do 6 classes a year with 10 students in each. Class size can range from school to school. I know it can be upwards of 15. It could be as low as 5. You could also do an in-home class, which means that the school has elected to send a trainer out to your home and work with you at your home and in your area. Some schools offer in-home training, some schools don't. Some schools offer it only on a case-by-case, as-needed basis. Our school accepts students from all over the United States and Canada. I can't attest to who the other schools admit, but if you're living in the United States, you're welcome to most of their programs. And I covered that our program is a 3-week program in the earlier slides. Now, in a class, typically in your first week, it's a lot about assessing the student and still getting to learn about them before ultimately matching them with a dog. In the first couple days in our program, we don't give you your dog right away. The first few days you work with trainers simulating guide work with a process that we call Juno. Juno is used amongst all the different guide dog schools. Now, Juno can look a lot of different ways. What Juno is it's just a fake name that we use as someone's working with their trainer to learn guide work. So instead of saying your actual dog's name or the trainer's name, you'll say Juno. Juno can be simulated through just a leash and a collar. It could be simulated through an empty harness handle. To get someone used to the feel of guide work, we will have a trainer hold one end of the harness handle and you hold the other. And that's so that as you're kind of learning this new feeling of motion of walking, and you might stumble or you might trip or you might be apprehensive, you're doing that with our trainer versus this brand new guide dog that you're trying to form a bond with. In week 1, the first day that you arrive on campus is just getting you acclimated to your new dorm and our campus. Let's show you where things are. Let's introduce you to your new classmates. You're going to be in class with 9 other people, and they're from all different walks of life. Our classmates typically become friends and create long-standing relationships. Day 1, you hit the ground running, and you're doing a lot of Juno work with your trainers in preparation of bringing a guide dog into your life. You will be doing routes. We'll be assessing your cane work. Monday and Tuesday are a lot of Juno work, and that's building that muscle memory that we keep talking about. Wednesday is dog day. It's the best day on campus. It's a day that you will never forget. They're amazing. It's when you get to meet this canine that is going to be in your life for the next 8, 10, 12, 15 years. I always tell the great story of, whether it's a yellow lab or a black lab, people quickly learn that they're going to have some outfit changes going on. The person that, of course, always likes to wear all black gets the yellow lab, and as they're down there on the ground creating a bond with their dog and hugging and playing, they're getting yellow fur all over them, and they're going to have to start wearing khakis and white shirts or whatever it may be. Our class progresses week by week, and each week we ramp it up a step and we make it more difficult and challenging. That first week, once you receive your dog, is just about muscle memory and getting used to that feeling. Even when you receive your dog, you're still just doing basic routes, getting up to speed, getting down to different, turn signals that you're going to be using, or commands that you're going to be using, not turn signals, but forward, left, right, halt, getting used to the verbiage and the feeling of using a guide dog. Week 2, we ramp it up. We take you to more challenging situations that you're going to encounter in everyday life. One place that presents a lot of challenges, as you might know, is a mall. There's hordes of people. There's stands in the way that shouldn't be there. There's tight spaces. For somebody that's visually impaired using their cane, the mall creates immense challenges. What we're there to show you is that with your new guide dog, they're going to navigate you around all these things, and you're going to be able to smoothly travel throughout a mall all on your own. The mall also has different fixtures that you might not see in regular life, such as an escalator, teaching you how to properly get on an escalator with your dog. The elevator, how to go through a payment process with your dog. There's all these different things and challenges that a mall can create. Week 2, we tackle public transportation. We take you down to Pasadena and put you on a train and get you and your dog used to what the process is like when doing public transportation. One of the biggest steps in our guide dog class, and it's about midway through week 2, is our night walk. Now, for a lot of you that are facing vision loss, you might have some vision during the day. That light creates contrast and you're able to see a little bit during the day. And then at night, you with the darkness, you have no contrast and you've lost all your vision. We find that a lot of people that come into class have avoided walking at night. And we're here to show them that, hey, you have to trust your dog fully. And we're going to take you on a night walk to prove it. We'll it's a big trust moment with their dogs where they learn, this dog's going to keep me safe no matter what. And even if I can't see completely, I have to trust that they know where they're going. Another challenge that we walk you through in week 2 is traffic training. We'll simulate in the most safe created environment, but we'll have an instructor in a car, and we'll show you that, hey, your dog knows what to do. You need to know what to do as well. That's a common theme that we kind of teach throughout our class, is that these dogs are fully trained. They know what they need to do. It's you who we're teaching. We're teaching you to trust your dog. But we're also teaching both of you to trust each other and have this significant bond. The other thing is, as I mentioned, you are in a class with 9 other people. And week 2, we start to customize people's trainings based on where they live. If you live in New York City, for example, your day-to-day travel looks a whole heck of a lot different than someone that lives on a farm in Oklahoma. Each of you, while you're in the same class, are going to have different needs, but we're going to arm you with all the different situations that you could encounter so that if that person in Oklahoma ever travels to New York, they know how to get on a subway. They know how to cross in busy intersections. And vice versa. If someone's in New York City, they might not do a lot of sidewalkless travel like someone in Oklahoma might do. But we're still going to teach them that, hey, when you're traveling and there's no sidewalk there, this is what you're going to do. We will customize people's trainings to make sure that there's an emphasis on the different things that they might use. So with that person in New York, for example, we might do extra work on public transportation. For that person in Oklahoma, we might do extra work on sidewalkless routes because there's not a lot of sidewalks in the farm fields that they're used to working in. Week 3 of our class, I like to call it that we are taking the training wheels off. It's all about showing you the independence that you've gained by having a guide dog. The first few weeks when you're tackling your routes, you might commonly have a trainer walking, you will have a trainer walking beside you, whether they have a leash connected or they're just following you. In that 3rd week, we say, okay, it's time to do routes on your own. It's to build your confidence and show you what you've gained, but also to give us the confidence that, okay, this person is ready to go home with their new guide dog, that they're going to be safe with their new guide dog. We're also going to throw you into challenges, whether we drop you off somewhere and we say, okay, this is a new area and you need to find your way home. That last week is also a lot about preparing you to go home and the challenges that you might face socially. We've worked, you've been in this isolated environment where the focus has been entirely on guide work, and you're going to get home and life is going to get back to normal. You're going to have to catch up with whatever work you have doing, family members, friends. Another thing is that your family and friends are going to want to love up on your new shiny new guide dog. And that time when you get home is really critical to keep building that bond. So you can't, it's difficult, but we teach our students, you can't just, go home and let your dog run wild. You have to keep that structure and regiment that it's used to being raised as a working dog. As I just alluded to, there's some non-guide work lessons that we teach. Class isn't, I tell people all the time, class isn't, as much of it is focused on teaching you how to use your guide dog. There's so much more that goes into learning how to have a guide dog in your life. It's not just the lefts and rights. It's, you got to remember, some people have never had a dog and we might have to teach them everything. Some people might have had dogs their entire life. So we cover everything that there is. How to take care of your guide dog. So, as somebody that's visually impaired, how do you feed your guide dog? How do you groom your guide dog? Grooming is extremely important because if someone's visually impaired, they might not notice that something's changed on the exterior of their dog. And by keeping a common grooming routine going, you can feel for changes in your guide dog. Okay, well, that cut wasn't there before, or they're feeling a little bit heavy. I might need to cut their food back, or what's this new bump that they have? We teach all of our graduates, of course, how to relieve their guide dog. You have to extend your leash, and you have to, when the dog stops moving, feel for a slanted back versus an arched back, which is number one versus number two. Um, we teach our students to know their rights as a guide dog handler, and how to handle situations that might arise. It's common for people to enter a restaurant and for someone to say, "Hey, that dog's not allowed in here." Well, when you have one of our guide dogs, you're a representative of Guide Dogs of America. How are our graduates going to handle that situation? Are they going to calmly explain that this is a guide dog? A lot of those situations can become confrontational, but all it really boils down to is that we need our graduates to have the right tools readily available to educate the person that doesn't know, hey, you have ADA rights and that dog's allowed to be there. At the end of our 3-week course, we hold a graduation. Graduation is an amazing day because yes, you've just completed this 3-week grueling course. I mean, it's common that people have shin splints by the end of it. But it's also a thank you to all of the amazing work that went into creating your guide dog. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that dedicated time and resources and goodwill out of the bottom of their hearts to make sure that at the end of the day, you receive the independence and confidence that you so desperately deserve. Amongst that group could be funders, sponsors, but one of the most important things is your puppy raiser. So we talked about puppy raising earlier, this person that had your dog for 18 months. And that day is for you to thank them and meet them, and that they get up there and they tell you all the funny stories that they have about their dog and how much it means that this dog is now achieved a level of work that isn't very common for a dog. Our graduates oftentimes become friends with their puppy raisers, but if you don't want to be friends with your puppy raisers, that's okay too. What's next? What happens after graduation? We don't just say, hey, goodbye. Good luck with this beautiful lab that we just handed you. We'll never talk to you again. No, there's a lot of follow-up and work to be done. While 3-week class is a huge accomplishment, there's a lot of work that goes into graduating. It really is just the tip of the iceberg in your adventure to becoming an accomplished guide dog handler. We tell people that it often takes up to a year after receiving your guide dog to really be not done, because training is always a continued process, but to really be at that comfort level that you need to be when you're working your guide dog. It's almost uncanny how many graduates call us at that year mark, and at that year mark they say, hey, the moment happened for me. It's one of those uncanny moments where something just clicks. It's typically when one of our handlers realizes that the thought process that they have been thinking so hard about when using their guide dog has become second nature. I liken it to when I first learned how to drive a car. And I remember, I had just gotten my permit and I got in the car and I was so stiff and rigid. I couldn't even change the radio. I couldn't take my hand off the wheel to turn the volume up or hit a button, because I'd get distracted from the road because I didn't have that muscle memory that comes with, repetitions. And, that first year, you're constantly working and developing your muscle memory. And at about a year, you kind of, stop thinking so hard about it. One of our graduates famously said, I don't know where my arm stops and the harness handle begins, because my guide dog has become such a part of me. And they just, instead of being two beings when they're traveling, they travel as one. So Follow-up includes a 2-week follow-up to check in, a 6-week follow-up, but you also receive lifetime support from all of our trainers and training staff and our graduate admissions team, or client services team. No matter when you encounter a problem, whether it's a year down the road, 2 years down the road, or whatever it may be, our school is always there to help you sort out whatever problem it might be. It might be something minor in guide work, whether you're missing a turn and you're wondering why your dog keeps missing your turn. We'll typically try and handle all tips and stuff over the phone at first, but if it can't be worked out over the phone, we'll send a trainer out to work with you. We also offer discounts on heart and flea and tick medication. We offer veterinarian services to anybody that can bring their dog here, grooming and boarding, of course. Transfer and ownership is an important thing to talk about when we're talking about different guide dog schools. I can't attest to what other guide dog schools' policies are, but at Guide Dogs of America, we own your dog still for the first year of you having your guide dog. That allows us, in case of, not that it happens very frequently, if at all, ever, but if someone were to receive a guide dog and we find that they're not working or it's not a good fit, we still have ownership to revoke that dog from us. Like I said, it almost never happens. But after a year, the dog becomes yours and you own the dog, and whatever you do with the dog is up to you. The last thing that I'll cover really is retirement, because it's a common question that I receive when I'm talking about guide dogs is what happens when the dog gets too old or the dog needs to retire. Because you have ownership of your dog, you have the right to keep your dog, but you might want another guide dog and you don't have room for it in your life. So you might retire your dog and send it back to the puppy raiser or adopt it to a family that you're very familiar with. A lot of different things happen at retirement. We look for, as we talked about, the dog gets turned in at 1.5 years and it's typically trained by 2, and you receive a 2-year-old dog. That's obviously subject to change, but it's around 2. We shoot for 6 to 8 working years out of a guide dog. So retirement happens for different reasons all over the board, but the most common one is that your dog is old and is starting to slow down. You're matching your speed to their speed. You notice that the dog doesn't jump up when you grab the leash or the harness anymore. Guide work is hard. It takes a toll on guide dogs. But that decision ultimately is put into your hands of what you want to do next. So I first and foremost want to thank you guys for joining my presentation. I hope that you can forgive me for some of the stumbles that I had in trying to record this, but I hope you also really learned about guide dogs and you have a better understanding of what is involved in getting a guide dog. You might, start thinking about whether a guide dog is right for you. I can't stress enough the importance of exploring all the different guide dog schools, because you'll ultimately find one that's right for you. I clearly have a bias working for Guide Dogs of America. If you're listening to this presentation, I sincerely hope you come and join us at Guide Dogs of America, but that doesn't mean that our school is right for you or vice versa. If you're looking to apply, there's a few first steps that you can take. The first step is visiting our website. It's www.guidedogsofamerica.org. You will find our application page with more information about our guide dog program and what it entails. You can even start your application by submitting a form online. If you don't want to use the website, you can call our number at 818-833-5834, and we will get you directed to our manager of admissions. His name is Greg Steinmetz. He's actually a guide dog user himself. And if either of those are too complicated for you, you can text the words apply, APPLY, GDA to 51555, and we'll send you a text back with that application page that I was talking about. I wish you all well. I wish you good health through this COVID pandemic that has taken over the world. Stay safe out there, and if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you and goodbye.